from his record Eunice Student Studies, I think it was, and we did that. We did this record in France and in the early 1960s when we were invited by the ORTF. That's the sort of national radio in France, and so that was a piece that he put together. Basically, I think that this piece is very revolutionary and improvised music, because it's scored in a sense. At the same time, it opened up new structures for the musicians to improvise. There's a difference between musicians that can articulate score in music. That means by reading notes and dynamics and playing with inside a ensemble. And so that will up to that point in the history of Afro-American music. Cecil Taylor is a unique composer. At the same time, he's writing music that he expects people to improvise on. That's a little different than European concept of composition and execution. Cecil Taylor was unique in the sense that he was trying to develop compositions that would be unique about improvisation as an element in his compositions. Given the fact that most people who are trained in music at that time could execute any kind of symbolic language. At the same time, they couldn't improvise on any kind of structure. So when you look at a musician like composer like Duke Ellington, who was an orchestra leader, at the same time he was a composer. He's writing specifically music for his orchestra. This was a unique arrangement between composer and player. Now, if you look at a symphonic orchestra on the same level as they're learning to play some music that is written by a composer. The band itself doesn't really have any style. It's playing a repertoire, or it's playing composed music. in America at this time. So people ought to think that improvisation arrived out of the necessity for people to improvise out of some need to express themselves. This seemed to happen among Afro-American musicians to a certain degree. They developed these forms of expression on their instrument. Their instrument was fundamentally a means to express themselves about what they wanted to say, and that was quite a unique experience. And it's kind of happened in America, as opposed to happening in more confined or musical situations. The composed musicians are trained to execute what the composer's intentions are. He has to be trained to do that. He has to learn how to play his instrument to a certain technical level. And then the composer is aware of the different technical levels of music. And you can look at music through that kind of way. The development of the relationship between technique and an expression. Impression was a developed expression. These two words are used in modern let's say I'm expressing myself here, and I'm improvising to a certain degree. I have no real text. Text means that I'm not reading a text. I have a subject, which is the piece I heard, in which I'm on. At the same time, I'm improvising to a certain degree in terms of my interrelationship with the camera and the video that's being recorded. So this is a live event. So this will be documented. So this is a kind of an expression, of what I think improvisation, when a musician but he actually expresses himself in time. And this is what Cecil and musicians of his generation, and that's like myself and Andrew Sorrell, Jimmy Lyons, who decided that Cecil was a composer. At the same time, he was a pianist within the ensemble. So the pieces, in a sense, were written if you had notated, and we had to write to express ourselves, our emotional state, our technical the development of the material that he was presenting to us. And this was an actual performance. This is not a studio performance. It's actually a concert. That means that it's not edited. This is directly what happened. So my area of as a musician, improvising musician. Well, I call myself an improviser, which is a little different than a musician who is specifically, as I said earlier, involved in notating music. And so the development of improvised music in the United States was a very small group of people. People tend to believe that Afro-American music was very broad-based in United States, but not everybody who's a musician, and I say broadly speaking, can improvise. Some people composers or learn to improvise to a certain degree, and so they're able to move, but to go into improvisation as a profession, this is a little different. So Afro-American musicians were primary involved in developing improvisations as an art form in the United States. It's going as early back as Louis Armstrong, and then you have the composers who write the music, the melodies, and the harmonic sequencer, and then the musicians or the improvisers improvise on this material. So it became what is called a solo, or a trumpet solo, or sax solo, or bass solo, drum solo. Okay, that's how you can listen to when you listen to some music of Louis Armstrong, for instance, or you listen to an orchestra piece of the same period, written and executed by a group of musicians. And they would usually have the written parts and the solo parts. Those were done by individuals. And so the bass, contrabass, drummers, and piano players had a little leeway in terms of what they could do with the chord changes and the rhythms of the bass and so forth, and the drums. So if you look at the piece that we just did, this would be 66 years after Jelly Roll Morton and his bands, and doing an evolution of Louis Armstrong, and the large ensemble pieces of Fletcher Henderson and Duke Ellington and Paul Whiteman, and all the way up to the Dizzy Gillespie's and Charlie Parker. This was a real revolution, different revolution. But what we're getting down to here, after listening to Amplitude, this is something absolutely new, in a sense, in terms of interpretation by the musicians. And so the basic aspects of this piece and its evolution, how it evolves within time. So if you take this piece out of context of time, and you say, okay, what music was going on in 1966 in the context of this piece? Well, at that time you had a lot of different popular music emerging, and in the United States and in Europe, coming out of popular music. I never understood the difference between popular music and serious music. I never saw that as something better or something worse as a musician. There's a relative technical development in all kind of music. I guess in all kind of music. I mean, musicians are professionals in the sense that they have a certain professional standard in which they execute their works. So, if you can pick this as a standard, you can say that that's pretty how far these musicians knew their instrument very well, and then their personal expression, which is their own creations, such as in that ensemble style. So this piece doesn't fit into what you might call a song form. It fits into what we call a compositional form. You have some statements by instruments and some moods, and you try to. But after that is done, it's now, as you heard it on the piece, it is set. These sounds are embedded, and they cannot be changed. So they actually are like a composition. So this is why a CD is so important. because it is a fixed form of an event, and how we treat a CD or LP as a art object, simply because it's a published piece, and we buy these musics, and they become part of our cultural sound culture. And that's as broad as you can be. I mean, there's so many different types of sound cultures, but they're all part of the 20th century, since we have so many different music communities and producing different kinds of music, and so much diversity. As you can see here at on our station. So we look at music from a point of view of its diversity. At the same time, what we're trying to develop here is the relationships between vision. Now, I'm going to show you a couple of things. This is like some video art that is popping and moving through space and time. It doesn't really have any sound, but it has movement and colors, and these colors are harmonically rich in their possibilities as they move through space and time. So an audio-visual art object is something that's dealing in dual senses. That means you're using your eyes and you're using your ears, and these two functions fuse into one. This is how the human mind or the brain assimilates information. Information is what the brain feeds on. Or it's like food. It has to decipher what this is going on. So we lost our images there. Yeah, I'm sorry about that. But I'm gonna move on. It's gonna pop. It's gonna pop up there. Pop up there again. Again, I just ran out of tape. And so, but the idea that of putting images and putting images in music but they all become one in the fusion concept. Now, so as I told you before, we were gonna move on now to bring you some music and some images. So let's see what we got here. Well, we got a blue screen.